Welcome to this edition of Cup Chat with Burning with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Today, join us and special guests Bryan, Calk, and Romey, Swanson as we discuss burning resolutions for 2022. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Cup Chat with Burning with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Today, Maureen and I have two of our favorite guests back on. And so you can go ahead and count on that this Cup Chat will run past 7 or 8 a.m. because you know we will be talking plenty. So thank you for joining us, Romey and Bryan, two of our Burning with Extension guys. Romey works for Audubon, Texas, and has a bunch of fancy titles that, you know, he's just Romey to us. And Bryan is officially the OG Burning with Extension guide. And it is true that Maureen now knows what OG means. So.
I have known what it meant before y'all thought that I had to be educated on it, just so you know. To be clear.
Well, I still have debate on that. So if you're joining us this morning, make sure you comment with what county or state you are joining us from. If you are from outside of Texas, we love to get our Cup Chat followers that way. And when you comment, we know you're joining us. So today we are talking about New Year's resolutions, slightly late, of course, because, you know, sometimes that's how we roll. But no time like the present to make those resolutions. So first, before we dive into our burning resolutions, Bryan and Romey, why don't you share your thoughts on resolutions? Like, do you even have personal resolutions? I mean, I promise.
I have to say too, though, because we are late, but that's because Emily intended for this to be our first Cup Chat. And then we ran a whole long time talking about how excited we are for this upcoming year. I kind of like hijacked that. And then we never got to the resolutions part. So I will say it's not Emily's fault that we're late. If anything, that's probably my fault. But also, I wanted to ask you guys this because I am a strong personal believer that resolutions don't have to be tied to the new year. That you should be ready to make a change if you need to, or make a new resolution all year long. So Romey and Bryan, share with us your thoughts about resolutions. Are we too late? Did we mess it all up?
No. I think that resolutions in general can be a great thing. It's all about improving yourself, improving something in your life. So I think that's admirable. I think it's great that we're doing this when we are, because I think this is about the time most people give up on their resolutions or forget about them. So here's your reminder about if you made any resolutions this year to don't forget about it. As far as like resolutions, just like generally, I occasionally will make them at the new year. Not always, just kind of if I notice something major in my life that I want to fix or change or whatever. Birding resolutions. When I was younger, I would make them all the time and stick to them, and they really helped me grow as a birder, actually. But I make fewer of them this year. I think my outlook on birding has just changed. So that's kind of my feeling, I guess.
Okay. Well, I'm super excited as we talk about like resolutions people should make. I want to hear some of your examples because that's awesome that you used to make lots of them. So Romey also wants to know.
Yeah. Well, sharing my philosophies, I am a strong advocate of resolutions.
Any time of year or just at the new year?
I know that it's really clean and neat, and I certainly do make some around New Year's or associated with New Year's, but I also believe if you need to course correct anything within your life or anything that you're involved with, that any place is a good time. Nothing better than the present to start on that sort of work. But, you know, I get it. I hardly ever start a diet unless it's on a Monday. I hardly ever start a diet unless it's on a New Year, you know, so those clean points to start. But the New Year's, I think what's really attractive is that resolutions are really good if you're like tracking, like if you have some metrics associated with your resolution, like I want to accomplish this thing and here's my benchmarks between here and there. So resolutions are great when you tie them into referring back to what you've done. And so that New Year's is a great place because you can look back on the past year's body of work, compare it to what you want to accomplish, and then create your resolutions and map. And I do that in, the professional world, conservation, personal life, And I find it to be almost therapeutic to think through some of the things, but also sometimes discouraging when you haven't really met your previous resolutions.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody like call it therapeutic before.
Maybe I'm weird like that.
But like, I think so Maureen and I didn't have birding resolution. Well, I mean, Maureen and I, this at the start of the, okay, hold on.
I have a birding resolution.
Okay, hold on. No. What I'm trying to say is at the beginning of this year, Maureen and I both worked on like a new organizational system. And so I thought that process was therapeutic. And I didn't even go through it like Maureen did. Like I already Maureen took hers to another level and I stopped. And so I mean, did you not find that therapeutic, Maureen?
That's a good point. Actually, that was really therapeutic. Just thinking about like Romey's describing the cleanness of starting new is a little bit therapeutic, and especially what we were doing because it had so much to do with organizing. It was like, I feel like I have a better handle on this. And that's an important point as far as like, I think where you and I come in for resolutions is that it's less resolutions and more like this is part of our job. So I put birding goals in my annual plan of work. And if I don't do them, then I'll get a poor evaluation next year. So that's a little different than a resolution. But yeah, so I think it's just a little bit different the way that we approach them. But
I am a big advocate against, I don't know, I've quit making healthy lifestyle goals because I feel like anytime you make a healthy lifestyle goal, in terms of eating, weight, those working out, I feel like those are things that have to be lifestyle changes, not necessarily resolutions. Yeah. And so I'm kind of to the point where I am not on the New Year fad of health and wellness goals, more as that should be my lifestyle, which I feel miserably at. I'm on the stock show diet right now, which means I eat once a day. I know that's totally unhealthy, but those of you out there who can understand that relate. So I'll lose a little bit of weight during stock show season because I'm eating fewer meals, but the meals I'm eating are highly unhealthy. So it works out. And then, but I like goals that are just like, I think that as resolutions and we make goals, we have to make sure that those are attainable goals. A lot of times we talk to our kids in 4-H about setting goals for their project. What do they want to do? And I want to win is a horrible, horrible goal. What do you want to win? Is that obtainable for everyone? That's not a good goal. So we need to make sure this is my lesson to my kids. We need to set specific and measurable goals that are obtainable. And so I think as anyone makes their New Year's resolution, I mean, I would love to make a New Year's resolution that Birding with Extension is going to travel and go out of state and out of country to go on a birding trip this year. That's not obtainable. So,
yeah, that's a good point. I feel very life coached right now, just so you know. Like, I feel like I got like a little 4-H kid that just got some good life direction from how you explain that. So for anybody who doesn't know, youth is Emily's passion, and Gillespie County couldn't be luckier to have her because this is how she raises up her 4-H.
Agreed.
Oh, thanks. Okay, let's go to our next question. Okay.
So
you go for
it because we got to put some boundaries on it because we're talking about birds today. But one goal that people sometimes set for birds, like the big one people think about, is doing a big year. And I have to talk to Romey real quick about something that's not bird related, but last year you did a Herp Big Year. Did you consider that to kind of be a resolution, or was it just your goal?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
about that.
Yeah. And I can relate it back to this year's resolution that kind of goes back into birding. But last year I had a thought about being a person, and Bryan's, another person, a similar vein, is like very interested in reptiles and amphibians, really, really excellent birder. I'm interested in birding and an herper, and the two worlds have so many parallels, but also a lot of non-parallels. So herpers, the people that go looking for reptiles and amphibians, don't typically do big years. They usually have narrow focuses within the herping world. Maybe they only look at snakes or sometimes turtles or whatever. But my thoughts were, what could a person do that looked like a birding big year. How would you best apply birding big year rules to a herping big year? And what does that number look like if you were to say do that in Texas? And really ultimately the goal was to celebrate the unique diversity that Texas has and to champion some of the landowners, some of the organizations, and some of the researchers that are doing a lot of work on behalf of the conservation of those species. And then for me personally, it was, developing a photography hobby and really just an interest, like everybody else that's watching this, geeking out, looking at and pursuing a bunch of really cool animals, trying to see them in their natural habitats. And it was rough because, it's a sustainable, it was an endurance marathon running, it wasn't a sprint. It felt like every weekend was a sprint, but it was also a year-long marathon. So the goal was see as much as you can. And in Texas, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of places to go. There's a lot of, ecoregions to visit that have a unique subset of species. And then also some of these animals are like birds. They're only there at particular times of the year. They're only active particular times of the year. So they can be much harder to find outside of those periods. And even then, maybe not really easy. So it was a fun, sustained practice. And the way that I related into my New Year's resolution for this year is I found that you got to take some time for health and like being fit in your pursuits of these, because you don't want to be out in the remote corners of the state when your heart decides to like have a palpitation or something. You're all confused. What are you trying to say? There's no hospital around here. So this year, I think for me and jumping back into birding primarily is going to be like, I also want to be comfortable while I'm hiking up Pinnacles Trail into the Big Bend or whatever, even though as comfortable as you can be hiking up a severe slope for miles and miles on end. So health doesn't need to be superseded by the passion pursuit. Anyway, that's two things rolled into one.
Oh, I like that. Emily, you look like you have a thought.
Oh, well, it's just, Romey's thoughts are very deep sometimes, and sometimes it takes me a minute to process all of his deepness.
Accidental.
And so, and that so ties back to what I said about healthy lifestyles. And too bad we don't have an FCH agent, but like being out birding and being active outdoors is so much part of a healthy lifestyle. Yeah. That's something, if we're making those birding resolutions or those herp resolutions or whatever our resolutions are, many times those can be applied to that healthy lifestyle resolution. And so not necessarily do we have to eat great and work out and go to the gym, all that. But think about how much you get out and you just walk when you're birding. We talked about when we did Rio Diablo Birding Camp, we did the Walk Across Texas Challenge at the same time to see if we could walk across Texas as a group during Rio Diablo. Think of how active we are when we get going. So that's kind of what I thought of. So anyways.
And 100. That's something that I would love to do. Emily and I haven't super talked about this, but because A&M does these Walk Across Texas challenges, last year when we were putting together a team, we had a couple birders be like, I'll be on your team. And like, do you have a spot? I'll be on your team. And we actually didn't have a spot. So I felt bad because I had to say no, but birders do go out and walk a lot. And so if you are interested in doing a Walk Across Texas birding, the next time they do a Walk Across Texas, I think it'd be super fun if people wanted to get together like in groups of birders and we could see who walks the farthest, just kind of friendly competition, and everybody can come up with fun names and stuff like that. So anyhow, if you are interested in that, put that in the comments along with your name and your county. By the way, always put your name and your county in your comments and say hello. But let us know, because we will keep track of that and pull together some teams. And I think that's a fun way to keep healthy.
So that's a good New Year's resolution, a birding walk across Texas. I like that.
Yeah. Okay, so now I want to go over, Bryan, I'm going to let you kick this off, because you said you had lots of resolutions, especially when you were younger. So can you share with us like what you think is a good resolution for a beginning birder? And you said some of those helped you grow. So like, do you have any insight on what were some of your more helpful versus less helpful resolutions that you made?
Sure. So I think like as a beginner birder, there are lots of options for for resolutions. I think some good ones are like just go birding more, or if you're
It's not a good goal. It doesn't have specific measurable goals. Birding more is not technical, everybody out there.
if you can
Specific
actually you can measure
measurable
it.
goals on that.
That's absolutely measurable. If you say I'm going to go birding twice a week instead of once a week,
that's a better goal. I like that one.
Emily just wants
what I think of as more
Yeah.
what I think of as more birding might be totally different to someone who birds maybe once every 2 months, right?
Exactly.
So I'm saying generally, birding more than you are now, whatever that might mean for you, is a great goal.
But put numbers on it so that Emily doesn't get mad at you.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that making measurable goals in birding is extremely difficult because birding is not necessarily a measurable hobby in every way. I think it's very much however you choose to enjoy it. And I think one of the pitfalls that a lot of people fall into, especially as beginner birders, if you're in a community of other birders, is seeing everyone else make the resolution of, I want to see 200 species in my county this year. I want to do blah, 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 blah. Like getting caught up in those numbers and in those measurable goals, I think can be actually really detrimental to you as a beginner birder. I think, so going birding more, go slower when you're birding, take your time. I think those are great goals. I think being conscious and really learning your backyard birds really well is a great goal as a beginner birder. Getting connected with a community of local birders is also an excellent goal. Joining a bird club, creating a birding club, making those friends who you can go birding with all the time. Those are really important as a beginner birder. And I think a very measurable goal that you can make as a beginner birder would be if you're trying to, say, learn bird calls and songs, just say, I want to learn 10 songs of my local birds this year, and just learn those 10 songs really well. And I think also you can say, you know, learning birds in sort of the broader scope. So like, I want to learn, you know, what makes thrushes unique, or what makes warblers what they are. So sort of looking, kind of taking a step back and looking at birding in sort of a general sense, I think can really help you a lot as a beginner birder.
See, and I think those are specific goals. Like, I think all of your unspecific goals that you feel like you couldn't make measurable, I think you could make measurable. Because when we just say like that's very specific. I want to learn more about the behavior of a warbler. That's a very specific goal versus I just want to go see warblers. And I think that that's so important as we think and create those goals. So I think all of your goals can be made measurable.
Right, they absolutely can be, but I'm not going to tell you what those measurements need to be.
No, everybody has to do those for themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, you know, if you just find pleasure in birding and just seeing the birds, that's wonderful. And I would also say, as a beginner birder, if that's already bringing you a lot of joy, and you're already getting outside and you think everything that you're doing in birding is great, I don't think there should be any pressure to be better if you don't want to be. If you are comfortable and enjoying it, that's great. I think that birding quickly becomes competitive for a lot of people, and that turns a lot of people off, especially beginner birders. So that's my caution. It's just like, don't get too far down that end if you don't feel drawn to it.
That's so
they can be learning goals. I mean, like, I think that's a huge thing, like that you talked about, is a knowledge gained resolution versus doing something more, or just have a better level, take your understanding to that next level.
But
yeah, absolutely.
It's also so interesting that you talk about just sometimes if it's something you do for enjoyment, just enjoying where you're at, and that sometimes there's not things we always have to get better at. Because I just had a conversation with a really good friend yesterday that I haven't talked to for a while, and we were just talking about how sometimes when you're doing really well at something, you might be asked to step into a position above what you're doing, but maybe you're not ready for that, because sometimes it's good for that challenge and it means you're doing a good job, but maybe you're just like, I like feeling like I'm rocking it right now, and I'm just going to keep feeling like I'm rocking it. I'm not ready for that challenge. And so that's kind of a good point, that especially because birding is therapeutic for so many people, or just recreational, that if you don't set a resolution for that, that's totally fine. But that also makes me think about, as you're talking about, just the different kinds of birding resolutions, because some of it's going to be more, learning different species, not necessarily seeing different species, spending more time in the field. The other thing, and Romey may have some thoughts on this, is resolutions that tie into improving habitat for birds. And so we actually, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have somebody come talk about native plants again, which we've talked about before, but we're going to talk about how to keep your native plants alive, which Emily and I both need. And so, Romey, are there any of those goals that you can think about, as far as like, if somebody was like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good with where my birding's at, but I want to make a resolution to help birds. What are my measurable things to do to help birds?
Yeah, I think that, it applies to just about anybody, whether they live in an apartment on a balcony, someone that owns a home in a neighborhood, or has land out in the country. There's always things that you can do to tweak, to manipulate with the resources that you have to make things better for birds, or to attract different species of birds, whether it's feeders and bird baths and water features, or if you have some control over your yard and land, the vegetation that you plant and support out there. I think that with all of these, part of the whole Smarty idea is that things should be attainable. So we have to kind of look at what we have to give to the idea and the concept, and to make sure that it is attainable. Birding is such, for a lot of people, we just think of it as an afterthought, but like, man, it's expensive. It can be really expensive to travel, to pursue, hotel this, vehicle that. And so some of these goals that we set are going to be a real tax on the finances, or time away from family, whether you have vacation or PTO. So thinking through those lenses, whether it's the land management, habitat, or just pursuing the animals themselves, I think it's really important to think about what is practical for your personal situation, and then to set some of those goals accordingly. And that may mean staying close and just enjoying, maybe one of the metrics is, I just want to get out and find joy with birds in nature once a week. And boom, you do that in your yard almost.
Well, and that's a good point that he brings up, and I hate to be more life coachy, but a lot of times, sometimes we can make big resolutions of like, I want to go to, like, my resolution this year is I want to travel to seabirds. Well, maybe you're not financially ready to travel to Rio Grande Festival and make that investment yet, and participate in some things, or maybe that's one of those things that you can accomplish yet. And especially being a young single person who lives in one of the most expensive counties in the state of Texas, I completely can relate. And so maybe utilizing some of those tips and tricks for financial savings. Like when I want to buy something big, I put $10 in an envelope every time I go to the bank and cash a check. I take $10 out of that check and put it in an envelope. That way, eventually, I will have enough money to buy whatever I want without going into debt. So some of those things, like Romey talked about, is, maybe our birding resolutions have other resolutions attached, and kind of build a holistic, better life.
Yeah, there's a lot of like peripheral resolutions. I didn't realize we were going to go this direction this morning.
Becomes an ecosystem, right?
Ecosystem.
An ecosystem of resolutions.
Well, we do have some people who shared some resolutions on Facebook. So do you want to hear a few?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, I like this one from Richard. I'm resolute to sharing birding with 100 people. And I think that's a neat idea. That's a good one. Love how it's measurable. But I think that's something, how do we share our passion and our experience with other people who aren't? How do we get them interested? And I think Richard has a good point there.
And 100 is a lot. That's pretty awesome. But anyone who's out there, watching, even if you're a beginner and 100, and you just want to share birding with one other person, and part of that is you learning. But I think actually, so we kind of talked about those beginner resolutions. That to me sounds like a really good, like, intermediate or advanced. If you are an advanced birder and you're like setting resolutions, like, I need to see this one species that I haven't found in the state yet or whatever. I love that one of sharing birding with somebody else. Even if just
I'm there with you. I was thinking that for the beginner, it's fine mentorship, but then when you get into that moderate to advanced, it's more about being the mentorship and then turning it into a measurable goal. Right, Emma?
Yes, I love it. Okay. Another one Richard has, resolutions for birding. And he's got listed several, so I'm going to top to one that I think is really interesting. Go bird where there's very little coverage in eBird and contribute to community science in a new way. So I know Maureen is jumping for joy on this one because she loves citizen science projects. And then I like the idea of doing something that's a little bit different, going and finding that place that doesn't have that eBird hotspot and providing that data there. It's easy, sometimes it's easier to go on the path that's well traveled versus stepping off of it.
That's another great, like, intermediate advanced solution of like, oh yeah, I'm, very confident in my bird ID and I'm gonna help out, because we use those all the time as reference. Everybody uses those. And that's super helpful. I like that. Romey, that's something that was probably a little bit different for your Herp Big Gear, is that you didn't have any way to, like, get tips about where.
Oh no, absolutely, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't like through eBird. Like, nobody emailed you an alert automatically, like, through eBird, but so the herping
nothing like that
help you get tips.
Oh,
where to go.
I will give so much credit, and I'll put a quick plug in. I'm doing a talk tonight with the Bear Audubon Society on the Herping Big Gear, kind of giving an overview of it. But one of the slides in there is a list of people that helped me in this project, and it is probably 30 to 40 names. And so I really did find through that project, and this parallels birding, a lot of folks that know more than me that are willing to share. Sometimes in this world, the herping world, people are really reserved and they don't necessarily want to promote where they're seeing things or where to go look. So some of it is like kind of trust and reputation and relationship building. And that certainly does apply to birders too. But I found that by and large, a lot of the people that are involved in the herping community were very open and willing to provide and share. Now they may want you to protect certain things. So there are some pretty big sensitivities, because unlike birds, reptiles don't really travel that far. And so when you discover a population where they're doing pretty good, and you don't want to let a lot of herpers that want to go out and collect those animals and put them in takes at their house, you don't want to put them on it. But I was very much supported, mentored, and some of my acquaintanceships became friendships. I mean, it was really kind of a cool process. I got to figure out how to write these up or tell those stories better and concisely.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like you're now just making fun of me at this point, but it's okay. I feel the love.
Okay, so let's some new resolutions.
It was new. Okay, so it is getting close to our 30 minutes. So I am going to guide us back to kind of a little bit of what our resolutions are for the new year, or if you could pick one birding resolution for the new year, what would it be? And I still know we will go over because we will get off topic, but we're going to guide us back into what are maybe your New Year's resolutions in terms of birding, wildlife conservation, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I'll launch then. About that. Well, I mentioned earlier that I want to improve my conditioning. Maybe not necessarily. I know that being outdoors is a wonderful activity. It's also therapeutic, for mindfulness, and you're active for your heart. But I want to be in less pain as I'm doing it, and so conditioning needs to improve. As far as bird targeting, I had a great conversation with like my original birding mentor, Mark Gray, who works for Plateau Land Wildlife, where I once worked. He is always badgering me about some sort of New Year's resolution goal birding wise. So we're going to do some birding. We're going to reconnect and do some birding together this year and work on our Century Club lists, which are going to different counties and trying to find 100 species and putting those into eBird. So that's the big that's the big thing that I'm hoping to accomplish with birding this year. I got habitat thoughts, but we would run long.
Why not? We won't let you go there. We'll
Hey,
have
Bryan?
we'll have Romey back just to talk habitat improvement one day,
Yes. Bryan,
which
you
we'll
said
have to
yours
have an hour for.
Bryan, you said yours are very shifted. So do you have what's your most birding related resolution or goal that you have this year?
Yeah, so I mean, it's for me, it's shifted in the sense that I hardly make resolutions anymore. I feel like I'm just kind of needing to sort of recenter, I guess. So like some of my, I talked about some of the early resolutions, and then along the way, I would say, like, and as an intermediate birder, I would sort of pick bird families every year and sort of say, okay, this is a weak spot for me, and I really need to learn these well. So like one year I said, I'm ignoring the sparrows and I really need to learn my sparrows this year. So that year I, driving down those county roads in Kinney County with Miss Bader, there's just little flocks of brown birds going all over which way. And I'd be like, oh, sparrows. And then that year I said, no more. We're going to stop every time. We're going to look at them, analyze, try to figure it out, not let anything get by. And that year I learned sparrows, where they all went from little brown things that look the same to where, it's one of my favorite groups now, and they're just gorgeous. And so, but now, I feel good about sparrows. I'm not really a lister in the sense of, I'm not trying to build a county list or a state list or anything like that. Like the only listing goal I have long-term is to get 500 in Texas one day, which is way overdue. But, that's not going to happen this year. That's not an attainable goal, as we say. So, I don't know that I really have a specific birding resolution for this year. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. I feel comfortable where I'm at. I definitely could grow. I definitely could learn. There's a lot I have to learn. Like, one that could be formed into a resolution that's measurable could be learning about molt, which I really need to learn about. But, as of right now, I am, kind of comfortable in that sense that there's enough other things in my life that I need to work on and improve, that birding is just okay where it's at.
Yeah, that's true. We don't make resolutions for like every single aspect of our life. So you might have resolutions elsewhere, and birding gets to be the place where you feel comfortable and don't have to make resolutions. I like that.
Bryan, I forgot something I want to mention real quick too. Maybe one of my resolutions. I just want to bird with Bryan, like outside of the work context, like just go and hang out, a couple of people just doing something. But we did talk last year about potentially trying to do a big year or big day at Fort Clark.
Yes.
Your talk just reminded me, like, man, we need to follow up on that, because I can marry two things here.
Well, y'all can plan that for April when you are both in Texas in the same location at Birding the Hills, because I'm going to throw out our 30-minute segue. Bryan and Romey will both be joining us for our Birding the Hills program in Fredericksburg, April 21st through the 24th. Registration is open. Go check out the website. Romey will be joining us as a guest for one day or as many days as we can capture him for, and Bryan will be our guide for the weekend. So both of those guys.
I'll put the link here in Facebook. We also put up a post yesterday, so it should show up. Space is limited. It's only going to be 13 people. We've had a couple registrations roll in already, so we really appreciate those of y'all who already are registered. But it will be super fun. And I think that could be another resolution too, is just who you get to bird with. Like, especially, the past couple of years have been crazy for everybody. And maybe you're like, you know what? I just want to bird with this person that I haven't seen for a while and spend some time. And we hope that you want to come bird with us, because the Birding the Hill Country will not be your only opportunity. It's just your first opportunity this year, and it's going to be gorgeous and super fun. We hope you'll come join us.
Well, and our birding buddy is joining us live. Miss Barbara is on, and y'all can see her in the comments. She will be our birding buddy. She is a local to the Hill Country, and will serve as our birding buddy as we go out and about. And we know Barbara and Romey, y'all have birded with each other a lot this year.
A lot of fun. Birding
A
with
lot of
Barbara,
fun.
I'll say that.
So, Maureen, do you have a resolution for birding?
Oh, I wasn't sure if you're gonna ask. I do, and it's not fancy, and it's not like, it's very simple. I'm not very good with bird calls. So like areas where we're doing a survey, I learn the ones that I need to learn for that area, but I'm not good at them generally speaking. And last year, I kind of just, not really by accident, but last year was the year that I mastered Buick's Wren. And that for people that are like, that's pretty common, like you should know that. I should, but it was they make a lot of different sounds. And I won't even say that I mastered all the sounds. Buick's Wren finally stuck in my brain. And this year, at the end of last year, when we were doing Christmas bird count, I was out, Judy Schaefer here in Uvalde was birding with me. We were doing the section together, and there was a bird calling, and just a call, and she goes, "Oh, there's a loggerhead shrike." And I was like, is that what that is? Because I hear that sound at my house, but I didn't realize that sound was a loggerhead shrike. And so this is going to be the year, it's going to be the loggerhead shrike year. So it's funny because Bryan said, like, learn 10 bird calls, and I've got one. That's just where I'm at, like with other personal and professional goals that need to happen. Loggerhead shrike, I'm coming for you this year. So
Gotcha.
Emily, did you come up with anything? Were you inspired by anything while we were talking?
Well, I think that one thing that I do a lot of times is I'm really attentive and this sounds horrible, but it's okay. No one throw me under the bus. When I'm driving, I notice more birds 9 times out of 10. And so I really want to be better with my quick ID. And so I probably have multiple goals more because everybody knows I'm more on the beginner side than any of you on the call, is that I really want to be able to so especially, all my hawks and all that family, when I'm driving, I'd like to be able to quickly ID those. But one thing that really intrigues me is our making the case presentation in terms of behavior and location of certain birds. And so Bryan does a really good job when he's out guiding me, and he goes, okay, so this one's hopping in the bushes and he's right here in the middle level. And so we know that it's probably this or this or this. And so I would like to learn, ish on our, so all of our silhouettes, I guess they're kind of family groups, but they're kind of not. So I want to know the behaviors and locations those birds typically like to be at for each group that we talk about in our making a case ID, and be very detailed in that information. So that's kind of one of those learning things that I think has always been like a next level. Even if I can't ID the bird, I feel like that's an important piece of identification that would take my knowledge to the next level. And so that's, I love when Bryan does that. So that's what I want to be better at. But it also requires me to go birding more. And with my new job, that's hard. And Bryan lives far away. So I don't know. Maybe the birding buddy who lives close
to you. See, you got Romey closer than he is to me. So
I guess Romey can call me when he comes birding in the hill country, and maybe I'll answer my phone, and maybe I'll return his calls, and we can go birding.
Maybe.
Depends on the day. Okay, we had another New Year's resolution come in that I'm going to read real quick. Lynn is reviewing eBird data, helps him create some goals, such as seeing some birds in all the counties below I-10 for the Century Club Challenge. He just completed that goal last year, and now his goal is to go from 22 to 25 over 100 counties. So he wants to take his 100 county list up just a little bit and over 100 of the counties. So it's a good goal.
I like it.
Very measurable.
About the county lists too is like, if you're ready to travel a little bit, but you don't want to go far, the county is a fairly attainable.
Unless you live in Valverde County, then every other county is 100 miles away.
That's a good point. Unless you're in the Trans-Pecos, and counties are huge, but you hit it right for species ever, so you don't necessarily have to cover the whole county. But yes, I like the county goals. Cool.
But before we jump off, I have a few more goals that people could maybe do.
Ooh, okay.
For New Year's resolutions. They could make a resolution to watch us every week or week-ish on Cup Chat.
It's a good one.
If they are a newer beginner birder, they could make a resolution to come to learn to bird this fall. If they haven't birded in the Texas Hill Country, don't forget we have Birding the Hills coming up in April. You could join us at. And everyone could make a resolution to hang out with us for all of our virtual birding seminars coming up this year. Our first one is coming up in March. In March, we will be doing sandhill and whooping crane seminars. We're super excited about that presentation. More information on that with the detailed agenda and speakers to come. But we are super excited about all the resolutions you can make with birding with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension.
That's our commercial. Let us help you fulfill your birding resolutions.
Exactly. So, which I will say, for those of you who are chasing the Century Club list, coming to our programs can be super helpful because we spend all day in specific counties. And sometimes those are some counties that aren't necessarily birded hot. This year,
but
that
also
was one thing
on private ranches that you can't otherwise access. Like you can spend the rest of your year going to the public places that you can access, but we can get you behind the scenes where you might find things that you won't otherwise be able to access.
I'll mention like Gillespie County is kind of an underbirded county for the Hill Country, although it has it has some pretty good assets like hotspots there. But it's not a overly birded county.
Yeah.
So we'll bird in Gillespie. Where is Junction?
Kimball.
And
Kerr?
No, I don't think we're in Kerr.
We'll be in Gillespie and Kimball counties for Birding the Hill. So if you are working on your century list, that was one thing like that. Bill Sane, one of our guides for Birding the Border last year. Birding the Border is a great one when we go back next year to get your 100 species in Valverde, Kinney, and even possibly, what's the other one?
Real.
No.
Edwards.
Yes. Thank you. My mind, is it not Monday? I feel like it's Monday. My brain's not working. I'm still on stock show mentality. So anyways, thank you everyone for joining us. Any final thoughts, you guys? Oh, Bryan has a final thought.
I have a final thought. I thought of a resolution. It's not really a birding resolution, but it's something that I've been thinking about. You know how Facebook brings up your memories or whatever, and there's a bunch of posts from long ago for me of pictures I used to take. I used to take a lot more pictures of herps and small things like bugs and leaves and things. And I was thinking about that. And then I was looking at Romey's Instagram. And so one of my goals this year is to take more of those kinds of pictures. And perhaps one of my other goals, if I can get someone to agree to it, is to get a herp photography lesson from Romey. Because I have been very impressed with his photography. If you are not following his Instagram, go follow it right now. And that is something I really need to improve on. So yes, that is something that's been in my mind and I've been sort of inspired by recently. So that's maybe a resolution for me. Take more. At some point I need to come up with a measurable metric for that. But I do need to take more of those pictures. So thanks for the
and here's my question. And this is completely, again, off script, and y'all can hop off anytime if you don't want to just listen to us talk. Now, Romey and Bryan, when we first started birding with Extension, we had Bryan and we had Romey. But if I remember correctly, y'all knew of each other, but you didn't really know each other. Is that correct?
I think that'd be accurate. Yeah. I don't know that we had actually had a human conversation at that point. Maybe a couple of like highs and like waves in Facebook or something.
Non-human conversation.
Yeah. But I will admit, I always admired Bryan. I mean, he was seeing cool herps where he was at. So that was always cool. But Bryan, I've always thought of as a very skilled birder. And I was like, man, that's somebody I need to get to know, because he's also there's not very many. Well, at that time I was much younger than 40, but there wasn't very many of us below 40 in this community as opposed to above 40. And so it was always cool to see kind of a relatively younger person that was very skilled.
Well, I feel like we've brought you together.
Yeah,
definitely.
But that's another potential resolution is find good new accounts to follow on social media. And we have two awesome photographers with us today. Bryan posts some really stunning bird pictures, and Romey's herp pictures are my favorite. So I will second Bryan.
And bird pictures, Romey's bird
and bird pictures. Romey takes all kind. Y'all both take really good pictures. Romey takes excellent bird pictures as well, but his herp pictures are just like, can we please go herping right now, because they're so beautiful. So
We're going to. We'll do it.
Yeah.
All I remember was
herping the
Bryan
hills?
taking the picture of the snake in that one day, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. He was getting way too close for my comfort level, and I thought he was going to die, and that there was no way. I mean, we were very far. We've already had 2 flat tires. Bryan, stay away from the snake. We did not need any more bad luck. But all
and it was a bull
okay.
snake. For the record, it was a bull snake, so nobody was in danger. But yeah, that video never made it to
scared
social
my
media.
life. I was scared to death. We had already had enough bad luck. With our luck, it would have been a bull snake that had miraculously become venomous and bit Bryan, and he would have died. That's how our luck was going that day. So
That's fair. Yeah.
Don't let it happen. Don't let that happen.
So he just got too close for me. So you herpers, y'all stay out of danger out there. So.
Okay, that's our message for today. Everybody stay safe. Enjoy birding, no matter what your resolutions are. And we hope to get to meet you this year, whether virtually or in person.
Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us. It is always a blast having you on. Together is always better too. I mean, just when y'all two get together, it's just never know what's going to come. So
Cheers to y'all. Keep up the great work.
Yeah.
Cheers with our coffee. So everyone have a great Wednesday. We will have the recording up for those of you who didn't watch. And our biggest resolution of 2022 is to make Cup Chat into a podcast. I promise we are working on it, but we're going to have to, we have it halfway figured out.
We'll get there.
We will. Our goal is to have it done by summer.
Yep.
We have to have a measurable goal. And actually our goal is to have it done by the end of January. Let's see how goals can change.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody have a great Wednesday. We will see y'all soon. Thank y'all for joining us. Next Wednesday, what are we talking about, Maureen, before we go?
Next Wednesday, we are talking, sandhill cranes. It's like a teaser for the virtual seminar. But sandhill cranes specifically, we have, I'm not going to remember his name just right, Rick, coming from Nebraska, and the Roe Audubon that is there, and what sandhill crane migration is all about when you've got like tens and hundreds of thousands of sandhill cranes all coming through one area, and how cool that is. He's going to talk to us about that. Little bit of a teaser for our virtual seminar. So
anyways, bye guys. Happy Wednesday. We know we're over. Thank you everyone for hanging out so long this morning. It was a joy. Bye.
Bye.